This necklace started with my dollar bead box. I just wanted to create something quick. Wanted to make something with it because it had been sitting on my table for weeks. What to do when presented with a bead that you want to use, but you can't string it the way you're used to? Well, you get a little bit creative. Hi there, Sandy here. Welcome to another jewelry making video at keepsakecrafts.net. So I dug through my box and found this 22mm Czech glass flower in turquoise with travertine and thought that would make a sweet focal. Then I dug through the bead bag, which if you get the dollar bead box, the bead bag of Czech glass beads is also an option. And I picked a couple strands from that to use. Now I used other ones, they're not here because I've already used them. But sometimes just making a design really quickly, the best way to do it is to simply not overthink it. So I could have used this dark blue, this same color in 3 and 4mm. The green is a different green, but if you combine it with the blues, it kind of works. I could have even used the pink. That goes really nicely. Or this red. Any of these would do. These are some of the strands that were in the box. I don't know about that one or that one, but I definitely could have used this one. I thought of it. So you just start looking at different combinations. You know, what could you do? That's kind of cool. Just start pulling together all different combinations. So I ended up choosing 2 strands from my Czech glass beads, and I will list these in the description box below and link to them. And then this was a strand of golden tiger eye that also came in the box, and I thought those went well, really nicely together with this bead. I also pulled out these 2 beads, these sunflower beads that are from a previous dollar bead box because I thought those went really nicely. And then once I was very excited about all the colors, I realized my pendant had the hole in an odd place. So how do you manage that? Well, this is the way I'm going to do it. Key to this is some bead stringing wire in a color that works with your design. So in this case, this is Iconoflex in gold, and this gold works just fine. It doesn't matter that it's visible. I decided to keep my design really simple. It's just a repeating pattern of this white, of this alabaster white vintage brown luster, the alabaster white forest green luster, which looks turquoise to me, and the golden tiger eye. I just did a simple repeat of 24 of these all the way down to the Hawaiian bead, and then I switched the order so they kind of surround that Hawaiian bead. And it's really easy to do. You don't even have to measure out your wire. You can do your stringing right on the, leaving the wire on the spool, and just string your patterns. Now the reason I did this number of beads, I did 25 total of each on each side, was because these beads come in strands of 50. I can't tell you how often my design decisions are influenced by how much I have of a particular bead. So you just string onto your stringing wire left on your spool 24 repeats of that pattern. So I've got all my beads strung on except for these last few. So I'm just going to add the sunflower bead, and then I will add the remaining 3 from the pattern, but just reversing it. Just sort of frames that sunflower. Before you start, make sure that you can fit 2 strands of your wire into the hole of your bead. This is actually kind of thick wire. It's 0.1019, and I don't think I could have fit any thicker in here. Oh, actually, I forgot one thing. First, I have to add a crimp bead because we're going to crimp it right here. These beads will not take 2 strands of the wire. So we're going to actually fasten it in a loop around the flower. And I want to be careful to make both of these about the same length. I made this one so it would just go over the bump of that flower. And I can kind of gauge it by the size of that little triangle there. I want it to hang like this with a loop coming up on either side of that center petal. But I don't want it to be so tight that it hangs stiffly. So I added my crimp through the hole. And then the end of the wire goes back through the crimp. And I'm just going to gauge it with the the petal, like I just showed. And if you don't know about how to crimp, about crimping beads, I will link to a playlist of jewelry making basics. So that's a little tighter than the other one. So I'm going to scooch it out a little. Just a little bit more. I love to use my one-step crimper. You can use just crimping pliers, but this is a great tool. And I'll be sure to link to this video as well on how to use this tool and why it's a wonderful tool. That looks good. So we'll get that in there. And make sure, yeah, those are about the same. So good. Always give a tug when you're crimping and make sure that that's going to hold. Trim away the excess wire. And I am going to use a crimp cover. You can see the one I used over here. It gives it the appearance of just a little bead instead of a squashed thing, which is what it is. It's flattened so that it will hold on to both the wires. And this is actually what I love to use my crimping pliers for. It's got those indents and it is perfect for picking up crimp covers. And I will just slide that over that flattened crimp, squeeze gently. And there. Now I can cut my wire off the spool. I'll just leave a couple inches on this end to give me room to work. On this end, I've already added a clasp. On the other side, I'm going to add just a bit of chain that the clasp will go into. So again, the crimp, then the last link of the chain. And at this point, I want to take this strand of beads and curl it around a bit. This builds in just a little bit of extra space so that you don't pull it too tightly when you're crimping. If you pull it tight, your bracelet or your necklace just is stiff in the way it hangs. So you want to leave a little bit of slack, and by curving it, that actually builds in some extra space. You also want to leave enough room for your crimp. Just want those wires not crossing over each other. I mean, if you don't have these tools, these crimping tools, you can just flatten this with a pair of chain nose pliers. Just come in and squash it flat. Give that a pull. Good. If you had a little bit more room in this flower, you could add another strand of the wire. There we go. Dangling down and have something dangling from the bottom. That would be cute. If you didn't want to use beads, you could do a similar effect, but just use something like wax linen twine or a narrow leather cord. So don't let the fact that a focal bead that you want to use is drilled maybe in an unexpected way. Instead, find a way to use it as a design element. Be sure to check out the playlist for jewelry making up here in the upper right. Happy creating!